Hello and welcome to episode 61 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast that tests the limits of the friendship between two people who mistake movie taste for personal morality. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. For today's episode, we welcome back Anne Singleton to talk with us about Martin Scorsese's, or Scorsese's, we're not really quite sure, we'll get into it, 2006 Oscar winner, The Departed. Ryan and I are both huge fans of Scorsese, but somehow we've never discussed one of his movies for the podcast. It's been several years since either of us has seen The Departed, so we wanted to see if our feelings about it have changed over time.
Many people praised The Departed as a return to form for Scorsese, as many critics were glad to see him tell another hard-boiled, bloody crime story more in the vein of Goodfellas. On top of scoring big with critics, The Departed is Scorsese's highest-grossing film, bringing in over $132 million. The movie's biggest claim to fame, of course, is that The Departed finally got Martin Scorsese the Best Director and Best Picture Oscars that had eluded him for so long.
But as is always the question, do those awards mean it's a good movie?
Or does it just want to appear to be a good movie? Keep listening.
We can't conceal that you were a trainee. You'll be convicted of a crime. We're thinking a guilty plea to assault and battery would make sense.
Given your nature?
You'll do enough jail time to convince anyone this is no setup. You'll be on probation, see a court-ordered shrink, the whole 9 yards.
You want to serve the Commonwealth, this is your chance. We need you, pal. You've already pretended to be a Costigan from South Boston.
Every weekend, Sergeant.
Perfect.
Do it again. For me.
All right, so I don't think there is a better way to introduce The Departed than to get that Dropkick Murphys song right in there at the beginning. So, as you were saying off the mic, that this is your UFC fighting championship song.
Yeah. When I walk in for my fights, it's the Dropkick Murphys that you'll hear blasting.
Well, you couldn't have picked a better choice.
No, I don't think so either.
So, for our listeners who are back after having listened to us before, we don't have two guests today.
Right.
That's not Harvey Firestein here as a guest on the podcast. You're just you've got a bit of a throat issue.
Yeah, I'm back. I vacillate. I was saying between like an 80-year-old smoker and a 14-year-old because my voice will crack too if I try to inflect at all.
So keep it at a nice monotone, if you can.
I will.
And listeners, might turn that bass down a little bit on the radio, so we don't blow your speakers. But we'll get through this. And you were already kind of feeling a little sick in our last episode. So eventually, we'll get the old Ryan back,
Lord willing. Yeah.
Anyways, but we are also super happy
to
have a guest for real. Anne, who you might remember from our Titanic episode, has come back to talk about The Departed. And so welcome, Anne.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't scare you away too much, I guess, because you are back. So
yeah, I came back despite how we disagreed about the Titanic.
The Titanic.
Yeah.
Not the historical event.
No.
We all agree that
happened.
We wished it hadn't happened.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised you agreed to watch another Leonardo DiCaprio movie.
As soon as you said Matt Damon, I
You
was
said that
right.
was it. You were back.
But no, okay, so while it might seem like that would be the main reason we brought you back was to make you talk about Leonardo DiCaprio again, we also brought you back because you have a blog where you actually blog about Best Picture winners. Have you done Departed yet, or is this sort of this is going to be something that might eventually reach your blog?
It actually reached my blog last night because
I
blogged about it before I came here. So, because when I blogged about Titanic, it was after we talked, and I was like, I kind of already said everything I needed to say about this. So, but it time-wise is pretty close to where I am. I reached the 2000s after the new year.
Okay, do you want to go over real quick? What's your project that your blog is?
So my project was, it was 5 years ago. I realized I wasn't watching as many movies as I used to, and I was really lacking in my knowledge of film.
Did this happen to
and whatnot.
coincide with having kids? Because I think that's what's happened to the two of us as
grad
well.
school, buying a house, kids, there were all different things that had kind of prevented me from watching more movies. And so I thought, I want to find a list somewhere that's going to direct my viewing, because I don't even know when I go into my library, like, what should I even be looking at? Because I wanted to watch stuff I wouldn't just normally pick up, which would be rewatching Star Wars again, which nothing wrong with that. Right. So anyway, I started the blog about 5 years ago, and I started with Wings, the only silent film to ever win an Academy Award, 1927-28. And that was when the Academy, for I think the first award show or two, they did 2 years at a time. And I've just gone chronologically as best I can with finding films, and I've found all of them. So I just reached the 2000s. I just watched Chicago, and Beautiful Mind was next on my list. Okay. Which is, I know, out of chronological order, but what was available. So when this came up, I was like, oh, this is not even too far off from where I am. Yeah, it's pretty close. And man, that's really impressive that you've gone this far. I mean, Departed would be 2006, so I mean, you're getting pretty far up there. I'm pretty close, and I've already watched. I watched Moonlight and Birdman, which were the last 2 years, not including just last weekend's Oscars. Sure, yeah. So, and there's some, if I've watched them before, I allow myself to say I don't want to rewatch them. Yeah. So I will not be rewatching Crash.
There you go.
Taking a stand.
I don't think that's too risky of a stand on this podcast. It's not. At least. I don't think it is mainly in the
I think even the director of that one would say, like, yeah, I get it.
Enough already. So we'll link to that blog in our show notes if any of our listeners want to check that out. But since you've watched so many Best Picture winners, you've got this good knowledge that we don't really have for maybe why this movie won Best Picture or where it fits within the Oscars, and it was kind of a big Oscar thing with The Departed, just because not only with Best Picture, but Martin Scorsese or Scorsese, we're not sure, so we're just going to go back and forth as far as how to pronounce his name.
I kind of try to split the difference and swallow that vowel so that it doesn't really. I'm not committing.
I could maybe put like a little glitchy noise in our podcast in that syllable every single time we say it, just so no one really knows where we stand on that.
Yeah.
Good idea.
That's good.
But this was the year he finally won an Oscar for Best Director.
And Best Picture.
Well, of course. Oh, yeah, but first time he had won that, for any of his movies.
Yeah.
Well, and it also won Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Editing. And Mark Wahlberg was nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
That's right.
And DiCaprio was nominated, but not for this movie.
For Blood Diamond.
For Blood Diamond. Yeah. So hell of a year for him, actually.
Yeah, so that was a good year for all of Scorsese's team, too, because Thelma Schoonmaker.
Schoonmaker? Is it Schoonmaker or Schoonmaker?
I thought it was Schoonmaker.
Okay.
But again, we have no idea how to pronounce any last names on this movie, on this podcast.
I think he purposefully, he himself and his team picks people who we don't know how to pronounce.
Yeah, but she's been his editor for a long time, and she won for The Departed. I don't know that it was her first one, but it was just kind of an exciting year for people who like Scorsese movies. Yeah. Well, then why don't we do our normal routine here and start off with... if you have a story about the first time you watched it, or just maybe how you felt about The Departed the first time you watched it. Well, Anne, you've not seen it before. Oh, really? Yeah. This was my first time. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. This was only the second time I'd seen a Scorsese. So we'll hold off on. Yeah. Really? Mm-hmm. What was the first? I'm just curious. Taxi Driver. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. We'll hold off on that then. I don't know if you have any sort of story about your. Well, yeah, I do. Okay. I think it was part of a bachelor party that I saw it the first time. We saw it in the theaters. Our friend was getting married. All of us wanted to see this movie. And we're like, well, let's just go before we go do anything. So I think we saw it in an afternoon opening weekend. And I really loved it. I thought it was a really exciting movie. I thought it was a really kind of heavy movie. I guess it was entertaining, but I didn't think it was like popcorn, light entertainment. Mm-hmm. But then I saw it a few weeks later, still in theaters with other people. And I guess maybe the crowd that would go see a Scorsese movie on opening weekend is different from a crowd who hears about it after a while. Yeah. Because the second time I saw it, the audience laughed through the whole thing. Like anytime anybody got shot, anytime anybody got beat up, the audience just died. And that didn't happen the first time you saw it? No, not at all. They laughed at Alec Baldwin and Mark Wahlberg. They're really pretty funny in this movie. Mm-hmm. But this other audience, I mean, I guess you should know, we spoil movies. We talk about the whole movie. When DiCaprio, am I saying that right? DiCaprio?
DiCaprio, I think.
That's it. Leo. We'll just go with Leo.
Okay, just go with Leo.
When he gets shot in the head,
no,
the audience
laughing
just died. It messed me up.
That's so sick. I think I jumped on the couch. I was like, what?
I hated it. Like I was like furious. I didn't know what I felt. I was like scared that this is what I was seeing. Also, there was a couple who had like their 5-year-old in there. What? Like it was one of the most messed up movie watching experiences. And it made me scared. It was like young men in this movie theater and they thought this was the funniest stuff.
You weren't like, in some sort of Clockwork Orange scenario.
No.
Like, it just seems like that would make me question, like,
I know
how depraved humanity
I know.
that you would find that. Now, I mean, we can debate whether it can be done, but some people do make movies where the violence is supposed to be kind of funny.
That's not this movie.
But that is not The Departed.
It really messed me up, and it actually has affected the way I watch it, because I genuinely enjoyed it the first time I saw it. And the second time I was like, really upset by a lot of what was happening. And then I kind of was thinking, like, is this a movie that lends itself to that? Or is this just like who that audience is? I own the movie, so I bought it and I've seen it since, but I can't shake that viewing, really.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that even makes it hard for you to tell us what your Letterboxd rating would have been on your first watch. Should we go with what your Letterboxd rating would have been after that second viewing?
I think I've tried pretty hard to keep that first viewing in my mind when I think about this movie. So I'm pretty sure on Letterboxd I've got it at 4.5 or 4.
Okay.
Because I really did love it. And I just really loved Scorsese. Mm-hmm. And he kind of is like a baseline 4 for me.
Uh-huh.
It's got to be pretty egregious for him to drop just because he does what he does, So.
I don't have a story like that. I just know that it was a movie that I had wanted to see because I also, even at that time, had been a pretty big Scorsese fan. And the last movie he had done right before that was Gangs of New York. Or no, Aviator.
Yeah.
But I actually never had seen Aviator. I still have never seen Aviator. Never. It just is something I kept on missing. But the movie right before that was Gangs of New York, which I know some people are kind of mixed on, but I loved that movie, and I still love that movie. I've watched it since and still love that movie. And so I was excited just to see Departed because it's a Scorsese movie. And I remember I didn't really have anyone to go see it with. And I didn't go opening weekend. It took a few weeks for me to see it. So I was seeing it kind of in a smaller theater that wasn't very well populated. And I went with, actually, he's a really loyal listener of our show, Justin, who listens to our show all the time. And it's the only movie we ever saw together. So yeah, if you're listening, Justin, you remember that? Remember we did that? But yeah, we just went and saw Departed. We both watched it. We both enjoyed it. And I remember we just both kind of looked at each other and said, that was a really good movie. And then that was kind of the end of it. We never talked about it much again. And I don't know that I really even thought about it much again, other than just as I'm ranking the year, thinking it was one of my favorites. And that's kind of the end of my story. I just remember really liking it. It did come out. It was in that period when it had come out on DVD, when I was just buying Blockbuster DVDs like crazy. So I actually do own the movie, and the copy I watched is in a Blockbuster box. Like I opened it up and it had the Blockbuster logo on it still. Letterboxd rating wise, from my first viewing memory and when I set up my Letterboxd account, it was at a 4 stars. So with that said, why don't we talk about this time around? In fact, I don't know. I'd be curious, Anne, maybe hear from you first. To kind of talk about your first time seeing The Departed.
I will say this is one Oscar-winning film my husband actually wanted to watch with me. The last probably 10 or 15, he's looked at the case and been like, nope. The exception being Braveheart. But we set aside time for 2. It took 2 nights to get through, just with kids and stuff. But I didn't want to stop watching the first night, which usually is a good sign for me.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was definitely one where I was like, what? Matt Damon is the bad guy? I was a little angry with you, Ryan, about that. I was a little upset. No, but I thought that was a really interesting way to see him that I hadn't really seen him before, because I don't see him as the enemy in the Bourne movies, even though I guess...
He does tend to always kind of play the good guy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, good as in like good-natured even.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but I was really, this might have redeemed Leo DiCaprio for me.
Really?
Yeah. I
We're
thought
gonna have
he
to
was.
talk about this.
I was really,
We'll have
and
to
it
let
was,
him
right? Send him a message.
Yo, Leo.
You don't have to try so hard anymore. You did it, bud.
It was nice to have something where it was exciting. And
Yeah.
that wasn't produced by Miramax either.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
True. Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be.
Yeah, not
Who
a real,
did produce The Departed?
Brad Pitt was one of the producers.
Okay.
Martin Scorsese was a producer. I believe there's somebody named Brad Gray who's a producer. I don't know who that is.
Gray
That's
Pitt
just-
Scorsese production.
That's just off the top of my head.
So if you had to give it a rating out of 5 stars, like right now sitting here, what would you rate The Departed?
I would probably be at a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I don't know if it's one I would watch again right away or anything, but I think if you like a mobster movie or if you just like an intricate plot, this would be a good movie to see.
How about you, Ryan?
This time around, it felt a lot more conventional than I remember it being. I think the story plays out really well still, but without really having the story to propel you, I think that the movie has a lot less to offer than maybe it seemed like on just 1 or 2 viewings. And I don't know if it's just that over time it's been mimicked, and we've had so many of these sort of like gritty crime shows, specifically TV shows rather than movies, that have come out and done things with characters and done things with long form storytelling, but have taken the filmmaking aspects and just kind of used them, not quite to death, but certainly so that it doesn't feel as fresh as it did at the time. But I mean, as far as like a crime movie, it's still really great and really well done and really well acted. I think there are some choices that we can get into that I think didn't age so well, or maybe just on repeat viewings aren't as impressive, but I would still keep it around a 4-star.
Yeah. I think there's something to the fact that like all 3 of us really liked this movie the first time we saw it. I think there's something about the first time you see this movie that just propels you through it, and you're just completely kind of entertained and glued to it the whole time.
Yeah.
This being probably my 3rd or 4th time watching it, and I hadn't watched it in a few years, I don't know that I was quite as into it this time as I had been before. And there were certain parts of it that I think it comes down to some of those choices that just kind of took away from it a little bit more for me this time. And, we'll definitely get into that. So, I mean, to me, I would put this more at like a 3.5. Like, it's still a solid, entertaining crime thriller movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's that much more than that. And I also, as far as, I mean, I know I shouldn't compare Scorsese's catalog against it necessarily, but this is pretty mediocre Scorsese, I think.
I think so too.
And so mediocre Scorsese is still
Right.
so worth seeing. There's not
Yeah.
a Scorsese movie not worth seeing, except for, I don't know about Aviator. I haven't seen that.
I'd say it's worth it. Well, let's start by talking about the things that do click with us, or the things that we can remember on our first viewings were things that seemed really exciting.
Okay, so one of the ways I can talk about this being still a really great movie or something that clicked is I can talk about what makes it a Scorsese movie.
Gimme Shelter.
I was going to say, this is like the 3rd movie Gimme Shelter.
It is literally the 3rd movie.
It was in Goodfellas Casino and twice in this movie.
Twice in this movie.
It's like...
And he used Dropkick Murphys twice in this movie too. But both times I was like, go.
Even
do
with
it.
that said, the choices are good. The music choices are good. So there's that. There is the amazing editing. Credit to Thelma Schoonmaker, but it's
That's
there.
hyphenated.
What I
She was a Schoonmaker who married a Schoonmaker.
But it's there. If it's in all of Scorsese's movie, it's no less in this movie. Like the editing is incredible in this movie. And he has a way of pulling through some really great performances that are memorable. The violence even is Scorsese. Like the violence is portrayed in such a distant, cold kind of way, just kind of matter of fact. So in those ways, that's to me like, those are the characteristics that make what in the hands of maybe a different director would have just been an even more mediocre, entertaining crime thriller. You know.
What about you, Anne?
I think the scene that really stood out to me as far as acting was when Frank sits down with Billy and has the severed hand.
The point I'm making with John Lennon is a man could look at anything and make something out of it. For instance, I look at you and I think, what could I use you for?
You can just see Leonardo DiCaprio like trying to stay undercover, but he is freaking out. Mm-hmm. Like I was getting on the edge of my own seat. Like, has Frank figured it out? What's going to happen here? Because at that point, it was still early enough on in the plot that I was like, I know there's a lot more left of this movie time-wise. Like, I don't really know. It's like, is this a case of like Caesar dies in Act 3 and then there's like 2 more acts to go and you're like, what's the point? But it was just so impressive, I thought, with DiCaprio, and also how he was able to like to turn on and off so many times. And when he'd meet with the therapist, and that whole storyline I thought was, I don't know. I'm not sure what I think about Madeline. As one of the few females in the film, like I'm not really sure what to think about her. I will say in regards to the violence, I watched the documentary about Southie and Whitey Bulger, the mobster who Frank Costello is based on. And one of the things that Scorsese said in that documentary was this film was easier to make because so many of the things actually happened. So even though Frank Costello isn't Whitey Bulger, a lot of the things that happened
were things that
actually happened. And what was interesting about the documentary was how people in Southie really liked Whitey Bulger because they thought he was protecting them. Because I kept thinking as I was watching it, for Matt Damon's character, Colin, like, how does this man have such control over him? Yeah, he provided food to him as a kid in that early scene, but there wasn't enough development there for me to really like get it because he's putting a lot on the line. And then I thought, well, maybe Colin's just arrogant. I don't, but then watching that documentary, I was like, oh, I think I kind of understand that a little bit better.
Yeah. So. Offered protection that they weren't getting from maybe the police or...
Yeah, they felt like they weren't getting it from the police. And they thought that Whitey Bulger was keeping drugs out of Southie, even though he actually was the one bringing them in.
It's almost like he's creating this codependent relationship with the community itself, like you need me, don't you,
Yeah, and that made sense then how Nicholson played the character. So
Yeah, I agree. There are certain scenes that still... I was just like astounded by, and most of them revolve around Leonardo DiCaprio's ability to play. He really plays kind of 3 different things because when he's with the police, he doesn't want to act like he can't do the job. And he's kind of at his most vulnerable with Madeline, which is a completely different sort of person. And then his scenes as Billy, like kind of the criminal. And his ability to react to other characters really enhances those characters' performances too. There are times where Jack Nicholson is like, I don't know why he's acting so over the top. Like he's really in Joker territory again.
Yeah.
But then there are things that Leonardo DiCaprio does that grounds the scene so much that it's really enhancing what Nicholson's doing.
You got something you want to ask me?
Look, you're 70 years old, Frank. I'm just saying, okay? One of you guys is gonna pop you. And as for running drugs, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? You don't need the money or the pain in the ass, and they will catch you.
I haven't needed the money since I took Archie's milk money in the 3rd grade. Tell you the truth, I don't need pussy anymore either. But I like it. Point I'm making here is, Bill, I got this rat, this gnawing, key-eating fucking rat. And it brings up questions. See, Bill, like, you're the new guy. Girlfriend. Why don't you stay in the bar that night I got your numbers?
And it kind of reminds me of when Christian Bale won for Best Supporting Actor for The Fighter, and he was saying, like, this is a crazy performance that I gave, and he credited Mark Wahlberg because he was like, a performance like mine only works when you've got somebody as solid as Mark Wahlberg who wasn't doing the crazy stuff. And I think that's the grounding that Leonardo DiCaprio offers in this movie, that if it weren't for his performance, none of the stuff, even Mark Wahlberg's performance or Alec Baldwin's performances, who would in probably a different movie feel out of place, or like the tone was just like, why are we all of a sudden supposed to be laughing at this? But because Leonardo DiCaprio can tie all three worlds together, the movie I think is working really well.
Yeah, I do agree. I think DiCaprio is the secret weapon of this movie, because the two sides to this movie really are his character and Matt Damon's character, Colin. So, the thing with DiCaprio, though, I think where his performance has to kind of be even a little step above what Matt Damon has to do is that Matt Damon, even though he is being a pretender, he's pretending to be someone he's not, he doesn't also have to convince you that he's a good person. DiCaprio has to kind of play this part where he's got to have that moral turmoil within him and then have that at a level beneath when he's actually doing these terrible things, but still make it credible, make it convincible to you as the viewer that he is convincingly convincing.
Yeah. So there's no point that we're like, why would they trust him?
Right. I don't know what it is about DiCaprio. If you actually go through his movies, in my opinion, he's like proven himself again and again, because he's not even playing the same character in every movie. Like his character here is completely wildly different from Wolf of Wall Street. But at the end of the day, there's still such a huge group of people that are like, I can't stand that guy. And it's not just you. I mean, it's like, I talk to people at work all the time and they'll be like, I can't see that movie because DiCaprio's in it. Can't stand that guy, Are we at least to a point where we can recognize the talent, maybe?
So there are bands and performers and things in this world that I have associations with. And it's hard sometimes to see past that association. So for example, my ex-boyfriend really liked Pink Floyd. I can't stand Pink Floyd, but I can respect Pink Floyd and I recognize what they did for music. And I think Leonardo DiCaprio, in particular, I think this movie like helps me more with that and saying like, I really respect what he can do as an actor. I think Romeo and Juliet and Titanic having those
I think
at a formative time in my life.
For a lot of Americans, it was that 1-2 punch. I will say, credit to Leonardo DiCaprio, Romeo is annoying a complete wilting flower of a character. And Leonardo DiCaprio plays him like that. Like, he's good at it, and everybody mistook it for Leonardo DiCaprio being Leonardo DiCaprio.
He didn't do any favors to himself, probably, with the Titanic character. Yeah.
And then the fact that his looks never faded. That doesn't help anybody forget what he used to be. And that Tiger Beat magazine stuff, even though he kind of hated, he did The Beach immediately after Titanic to hopefully wash that out of anybody's minds, but didn't work. Everybody just hated The Beach. But I think that Romeo and Juliet Titanic double whammy, and he was everywhere all the time for like 3 years. But I mean, so much credit to him. Like, you're right. Even if you just look at his, I think 5 Scorsese movies.
I mean, he has become, for a while there, he was Scorsese's De Niro, and
until he got his Oscar, then he's like, thanks, I'm done.
I just always wondered what Scorsese kind of even saw in him, at the time.
Because it's very collaborative. Yeah. Like Leonardo DiCaprio was one of the first people he picked for this movie, and then same with Shutter Island afterwards and Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, Aviator. Like, I don't know how they got linked up for Gangs of New York, but for The Aviator, Scorsese only wanted DiCaprio. For The Departed, for I already listed the other ones. But everybody was sort of calling him his De Niro, his new De Niro, which was sacrilege to like everybody that DiCaprio could be De Niro. But given the trajectory of Robert De Niro's career, I think it's a fair comparison. Like, I don't think De Niro has necessarily like stayed on top.
Right.
What? Come on, man. Oh, come on, you fucking moron. Come on. Well, you want me to say it? Huh? I'm not a cop, all right? I'm your fucking cousin. You're bad. You corrupt bastard. You must be my cousin. Fucking Ricans think they know everything. If they knew shit, they wouldn't be Puerto Ricans. Irish Ricans. Pigs for pigs. Shut the fuck up for 5 seconds, huh?
I mean, we may not be done talking about things that we like about this movie, but maybe this is because it's 10 years later, because I've seen this movie a few times. Just that edginess, the casual racism, as like a way to show that this movie is edgy and isn't going to pull any punches just didn't work for me. It just made me be like, oh, that's gross. And maybe in 2007 or 2006, it was edgy. And maybe it's good that doesn't feel edgy anymore. Like we've progressed in 12 years to where that just is like, can you stop?
Yeah, I feel like there's a while, and even I think you still see it today, where there's a sense that like we need to throw this in to establish credibility. Like
Realism,
this is how people talk. And you might not like it, you might be offended, but hey, this is how people talk, man.
Yeah.
And you know, the William Monahan is the screenwriter here, and I don't know how much of this is in the script and how much of it's just been added later, but you know, he is a guy who grew up in Boston.
Yeah.
That kind of like casual racism or
and misogyny.
Derogatory. Yeah. It didn't achieve that goal, I felt like, of just sort of being like real.
Right.
But the swearing did. Like after a while, you just kind of stop noticing them because this is just, I believe it. I believe this is the way they talk. And especially the way Mark Wahlberg delivers some of that cussing is like so, it just rolls off the tongue so perfectly.
And when he and Baldwin kind of go back and forth a couple of times.
Oh my gosh, those are some of the best scenes.
You will not ever know the identity of undercover people. Unfortunately, this shithole has more fucking leaks than the Iraqi Navy.
Fuck yourself.
I'm tired from fucking your wife.
How's your mother?
Good, she's tired from fucking my father. Good. Today, girls, what I have for you is microprocessors.
That is what I think, more than anything else, would root me in that where I felt like the dialogue was real.
You're right. The swearing, you end up just not even hearing it. But every time the racism or the misogyny popped up, it was like, oh, yeah, that was awkward.
Because I think also it's in scenes where I'm even wondering if the scene had to be there. Like the stuff about like where he says where they call each other faggots, like they're playing rugby. And it's like that rugby scene didn't even have to be in there.
No.
Like it didn't serve any purpose whatsoever.
There's like firemen never show up again.
Well, and it's like, I don't know if maybe part of that was to develop Colin's character for us in that he really isn't this great guy. Or I don't know, because I think that's part of my issue with Colin and Madeline's relationship. I kind of understand why it's there, but I don't fully understand why it's there, I think.
Is he charming in the elevator? Or is this 2018? No, that is not charming.
I did not think he was charming. And but I also thought, like, here's a therapist who has her own issues who needs to go to therapy.
You making a house call?
Have I seen you professionally?
No. I know who you are, though. I know. Guys got to use their service revolver in the course of duty, and then they get to come to talk to you about their feelings and whatnot. No, I know how it goes. You're a mental health professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have an appointment on this floor.
Oh, well, you'll have fun. They're all freaking crazy on that floor. I'm one more up.
Oh, fancy policeman.
Yeah, that's right, fancy.
Are you a statey?
Yeah, I am. I'm actually going to law school also, though.
Suffolk nights?
Well, yeah, they don't run Harvard at night, last time I checked.
When was the last time you checked?
Before I went to fucking Suffolk.
Okay, listen, I went to UMass. I wasn't insulting you.
Well, I thought you were, so now you gotta buy me dinner.
Well, maybe you can shoot someone, and then you'd have to see me professionally.
I'll stab someone in the heart with a fucking ice pick if it gets me dinner with you. Will you?
Come on.
No, that's all right. I'm a detective. I'll find you. No, sir, I'm just joking. I need the cat.
I almost, as a woman, am offended that this is the type of character that's there. She buys all the crap that he sells her constantly.
And she really is the surrogate for women because she's pretty much the only woman in the entire movie.
Other than Frank's girlfriend?
I think her name is Gina.
Oh, really? She does have a name.
I think on IMDb she had the name Gina.
Even aside from her character itself, I find her in the movie a wedged in thing. I mean, not that it does a lot of character development for DiCaprio and Damon's character.
Plot device.
She is a plot device.
Well, and then when she's pregnant, I was like, oh no, they did not go there. They have the ultrasound and it's like, it's a boy. I'm like, you clearly are not 20 weeks pregnant. I'm like, you cannot pull that over me. Like, where did your makeup and costume department fail you, Marty? So it's like at that point, any interest I had in her as a character, I was like, I'm done.
The fact that she agrees to go out with Leonardo DiCaprio moments after she's just so done with him, you're off my caseload. And then he's like, you want to get coffee? And she's like, I do. I mean, she doesn't say it, but it's just like,
Well, and she also gives him a prescription for drugs that she said she wasn't going to give him either.
If the movie were to defend itself, I think it could stand on the idea that was introduced very early on when he says, like, do you want to be a cop or a criminal? And I say, when you're looking down the barrel of a loaded gun, what's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
You could conceivably maybe try to say, oh, well, when she gives him drugs, isn't she just doing what the drug dealers are doing? Like, she's just, I don't know, like the fact that she sees people on parole and police officers. She's the in-between between cops and criminals because she hears both sides and she understands, seeks to understand both sides or something. But I don't think that the movie's done anything. I don't think the script has done anything smart enough to actually make that an argument.
But she didn't have to go get coffee with him.
She didn't. That still doesn't make sense.
She didn't have to sleep with him.
That's true. Well, you could argue that was Matt Damon's fault because the picture of her as a little girl, Damon saw it and was like, get this out of here. DiCaprio saw it
and hung it up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's put it this way. After sleeping with Billy, she should have dumped Colin. I mean, the moment he rejected her picture.
Yep.
Like, that was the other thing I think that was difficult for me with her was just that she stayed with him. And I was like, so many times there were clues that you shouldn't stay with him.
Yeah, she's a very problematic character without enough depth to like explain it. She's just so used by the movie and the character. She's just got so little agency and autonomy that she's not even making her own choices. Just the character's aged really poorly. And the movie has aged poorly, I think, because of that character. Have we talked enough about what we don't necessarily like? And what did you, Nate, I think a lot of what Nate and I are talking about is stuff and repeat viewings, but is it stuff aside from like Madeline and some of the other things you've mentioned that on a first viewing were maybe tedious or I don't know?
I think it really was just Madeline's character for me and a little bit of Dignam being like, I felt like he was too much of a stock character. And like looking up what it was nominated for and seeing Mark Wahlberg there, I was like, that's surprising out of all the acting that I saw that he would be the one who would be nominated. And it's not that he wasn't bad, but he wasn't like, wow.
Hey, what do you think? You can pop somebody and there's a special card to play? That guy Jimmy Bags, whose jaw you broke, happens to work undercover for the Boston Police Department.
I'm going fucking nuts, man. I can't be someone else every fucking day. It's been a year of this. I've had enough of this shit.
Calm down, all right? Most of the people in the world do it every day. What's the big deal?
Well, I'm not them, all right? I'm not fucking them, okay?
Exactly. You're nobody. You signed the papers, remember? Now, we're the only two people on the face of this earth that even know you're a cop. How about we just erase your file? Huh? How about that? How about we erase your file and then bang, you're just another soldier for Costello, open to arrest for I don't know how many felonies, huh? What do you say we do that, Cap?
Can we just talk explicitly, like, what are your thoughts on his performance? Because I remember it being really funny and really kind of badass. This time I don't think it came across that way so much.
I just thought he was a jerk the whole time. I thought it was like the classic good cop, bad cop routine. Which I was like, that feels a little cheap at times. But then
to the point that like would Queenan, what was his name?
Queenan, yeah.
Charlie or Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen's character. Would they really work that closely together?
That's what I kind of wondered too. Like how does Dignam have this sort of, and Mark Wahlberg's character have this sort of authority to be there? But I mean, I guess Martin Sheen, it might be the association with the West Wing. It's almost like he can do no wrong in my mind sometimes. Yeah. And then when he takes Billy in as, and offers him supper and all that, like I was like, that scene was so sweet. Mm-hmm. And when he died, how Billy reacted. I mean, for him, I was with him, but Dignam, I was like, I just didn't get him as other than just he's like a jerk.
I mean, I still thought it was pretty funny, I guess. But this time around, I thought I saw more that this is kind of just a stock character, that he is playing the bad cop in the good cop, bad cop routine. But he's also trying to provide some of the comic relief in the movie through that stock character.
And I thought there were still some funny things, but as far as like how he treats Leonardo DiCaprio, it's like he's trying to sabotage his whole undercover thing. So is he just really bad at knowing his personnel and thinking like, nah, he knows I trust him. Like, this is how I motivate people. It's like, well, that's how Billy gets motivated. Billy gets motivated when you bring him in for coffee late at night. Like, is he just that bad of a manager?
I mean, I did love that he's the one who gets justice at the end.
Yeah.
And I liked that scene. It was unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting a little angry at the end, thinking justice wouldn't be served.
Yeah.
And then when it was, and then who it was and how he did it, I was like, all right.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, because of anybody who's left in the police department, he's the one who is on the side of justice. But he just figured it out and went and killed him. Is that what?
I guess I just thought it was something simpler, like out of that whole scenario, Matt Damon's character is the only one alive. Okay, that's it. He's the one.
He's the one.
He's the
That's
one.
what I'm saying.
I think that's how I figured it out.
Did he just figure it out?
Yeah. I honestly hadn't thought about it too much.
Or is he the ultimate mole? Because
Well-
he got Frank killed, he had to kill Matt Damon.
He
Because
is
Matt
the
Damon
last character you see before you see the rat on the
I know.
rail.
No, well, you see Matt Damon's dead body.
Oh.
Yeah, I think the rat is definitely Matt Damon.
Or the rat was
If we can't figure out what the rat symbol means,
it's not a
we
symbol.
don't deserve to talk.
I just got it. It's not a symbol. That
The rat
actual
is the rat?
is the rat and
Is the
an
rat
informant.
the mole?
Yes.
The rat is the mole.
See, Mark Wahlberg, you didn't realize it, but his character had a rat in him the entire
is,
time,
like,
just
and
kind
it
of
came
crawling
out.
around, and
Got-
it was
got
just always
spooked by
around.
the gunshot, crawled out. So the rat is the mole. There was a mole, but it was underground.
Uh-huh.
We didn't see it. The mole is the rat, I think,
well-
is what we're supposed to piece together.
I guess this is why it wins Best Picture.
Think about it
because
again. It's
you,
so
you think about
layered.
it. It's it takes that many viewings for you to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the thing with watching all of the award winners. The thing with The Departed, I was thinking, I haven't seen a gangster mob movie for, I feel like, a while. And so then when I looked back at my post, the last one I wrote about was like Godfather 2. So it was Godfather 2, and French Connection I kind of like toss in there in that realm. In the 80s, it was a lot more of inspirational family drama.
Yeah.
I mean, and then early 90s,
Platoon.
Driving Miss Daisy was in there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Ugh.
Platoon would be the exception in that. Like, I mean, war movies. I've
Right.
seen the first winner ever was a war movie. I've seen a lot of war movies. But it was interesting to think about The Departed coming up, but such a big gap in time, because I thought, surely I've seen something that's like an organized crime or mobster one. So then I started looking to see, well, what ones have even been nominated? And that's when 1997, LA Confidential, and I was like, oh, right.
Yep.
Yeah, they deserve that one, but they didn't get it.
Goodfellas 1990.
And the Goodfellas. And so then I was kind of wondering, since I haven't seen a lot of Scorsese, but is this like, oops, we should have given this to you earlier, so
Yes.
we're going to give it to you for this?
It was.
And that's kind of what it felt like to me. I'm like, I'm enjoying this movie. But as I find with a lot of Oscar winners, I'm like, I don't really know why this is one I should be watching, or one that is like, and I think that's because I'm getting to the end now where I'm like, have I really improved my understanding of film and culture?
But I look at the field of the other movies that were
Right.
there, and I'm kind of like, okay, The Departed, even though it does seem like it got awarded as being sort of like we need to reward Scorsese's work a little bit. It's kind of like, well, I don't know what else you would have necessarily given the award to that particular year, because you had the other nominees that year were Babel, Letters from Iwo Jima, Little Miss Sunshine, and The Queen.
Yep.
I don't think any of those movies has really had any more longevity than The Departed has.
No, I don't think so. One of my rules for my looking at a year and thinking what are the movies that are really going to live on, I'd say look at the screenplay nominees, because there's always a couple movies in there that people are like, this is doing something. Audiences didn't really get it. We're not sure what's happening here. It was probably the script. And so the screenplay nominees that year that I would say are probably the ones to remember: Pan's Labyrinth, Children of Men, Borat, and Little Children as like the more standout movies from that year.
Now that field with The Departed, now that's a Best Picture field right there.
I agree. I would say of that group, Pan's Labyrinth or Children of Men.
I would say,
probably
Children of
like
Men would
the
be my
two,
choice of all those.
Or The Prestige was that year.
Mm.
Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest was that year, you guys.
Dreamgirls was that year, because that's the year that
That's right.
Jennifer Hudson won her Best Supporting. Right?
Marie Antoinette was that year.
Yeah. Talk about an underappreciated movie.
Have you seen Marie Antoinette? And
No.
you've got to.
I know. And that's what.
Especially thinking about
Now
the
think
character
about
of Madeline.
Now think about it. That is interesting to think about, actually, because how fresh and cutting edge does that movie feel? And
Yes.
then even compared to The Departed.
Right.
And I would have never thought those came out the same year.
No.
Even though now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that makes total sense. Just thinking back on that period of my life, they did. I do now remember they were out around the same time, but they totally feel like they're of different times.
Yeah.
Marie Antoinette seems like such a more relevant and lasting movie than even The Departed, I think. Yeah. Interesting. That's interesting to think about.
That's really interesting to think about, if you ask me.
Given the fact that we just spent a lot of this podcast talking about the Madeline character, wow. I guess I'm trying to still figure out, because this is just, at the end of the day, a crime thriller. Mm-hmm. But what was it that Scorsese was drawn to in this, character-wise? Like, what is it really that he's trying to say through these characters?
Well, I'd say, the bit of the documentary I watched about him that was on the bonus disc, Scorsese was saying the two questions that drives him are, what is a man and what is a hero? And so when he said that, I thought, well, who really is the hero in The Departed for me? Is it Billy Costigan? Because he's an undercover cop and he's trying to get the bad guy, but he has to do some really terrible things along the way.
Yeah.
Or at least allow terrible things to happen along the way.
Yeah.
And there's the fact that he's conflicted about them enough.
Right. And then the other thing I was thinking about, there was a segment on the documentary about Taxi Driver and how that movie deals with loneliness. And that made sort of resonate with me with the Departed. And it's not just that, Billy clearly lonely, right? Yeah. There's so many scenes that maybe are almost too over the top where he's sitting in his mom's old house looking at pictures and stuff. And it's like, okay, I get it. But then I was also like,
with the acoustic plucky music.
Hey, is anybody else there with him?
But then I was also thinking,
he's alone.
I feel like Colin's character is also like alone or lonely because he's the rat in his department. He doesn't know that there's another rat, of course. And there's a lot of scenes where he's shot all by himself in like a small office. And then he also becomes more isolated when he's the one selected to root out the rat.
Right.
So like those two, because of their parallel journeys, I guess, I was kind of thinking a little bit about that.
Or another way to think about it is these are kind of two lonely people, and they both have these father figures that they're trying to please. Yeah. And one just happens to be a good guy and one happens to be a terrible guy. Yeah. And so does that even, like, who you want to please, does that make you... Because, it's obvious that Billy wants to please, the Martin Sheen character, or at least... It's not like he
even
trying...
what he thinks.
It doesn't seem like he's even trying to prove anything to himself. It's like he's just trying to please these people who have entrusted him to do this work. And it's kind of the same with the Matt Damon character. He just wants to please Frank.
So it's almost not so much be careful who you pretend to be, but be careful who you're trying to please.
Yeah.
Who you're trying to seek approval from. Yeah, I think those are reasonable to claim themes in this movie. And they're well examined enough by Scorsese or the screenwriter. Anything bad, I'm saying it's a screenwriter. Anything good, I'm saying it's Scorsese. But I think that they're like present and explored enough to be able to say that they were like, yeah, that's why you did this movie. But also, he also always explores guilt and what makes you feel guilty, what makes you actually guilty, and what happens to you in response to that.
Mm-hmm. And in this movie shows you get shot in the head.
Yeah. You just
that's the moral here.
That's it.
It did feel very Shakespearean to me at that point. Like I was like, whoa, we are doing a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah, we're all dead.
Who's left? Who's left at the end? That's like
the rat. Yeah, and Mark Wahlberg. I wonder if the rat is the hero.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That rat is...
You meant the actual
rat at the end is the hero.
Because he's not trying to please anyone.
No.
He's just being a rat.
Yeah.
Doing the rat things.
Yeah.
Pretty selfish, actually.
He's a risk taker, that rat, because that's a balcony.
Okay, well, I don't know where that leaves us. Has anybody kind of...
I don't think anybody's feeling... maybe you feel a little bit more positively about the movie, but...
or did we kill your buzz?
Anne,
I don't know.
I'm talking to Anne. People can't see
Yeah, you can't see the...
I think I'm still at that 4 out of 5. It was good, and, I don't feel the need to watch it again right away, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, I might probably keep it at 4.
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave mine at a 3.5. Yeah, I don't think we're in disagreement really on much of anything. I think it's just how we all kind of evaluate ultimately how we feel about the movie. And a part of me is a little disappointed because like this is the first time we got to talk about Scorsese for the podcast.
Right.
I mean, he is such a formative director for me. Like I put 4 or 5 of his movies as like all time.
Yeah.
You know, just what made me realize I love film was like watching Scorsese movies and him as a person, as someone who like, you know, really does a lot to advocate for like restoring movies. And he's on like a million of the Criterion intro, you know, like, once you get into film, it's like you can't avoid Martin Scorsese. He's just like
and
all
support
around,
for young directors and support for future filmmakers. He's just pretty much across the board. He's like somebody to be admired. And watching The Departed, I wonder too if Wolf of Wall Street, because I watched that and left drained because it's like morally bankrupt, but also exhilarated by the filmmaking. I wonder if I were to watch it again, if I would feel like, okay, I've seen some of those things again. I feel like he's just not that filmmaker anymore, that he's not, that isn't what comes out of him. I feel like Silence is the sort of filmmaker Martin Scorsese is now. And if he could, he would keep making contemplative, like religious movies, but he gets a lot more money by making Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
I don't know,
but you know, it's a because that's always been in part of him, because he did Last Temptation too.
I know that, but he, to me, he felt so much more invested in Silence. Like Silence, when there were shots, like there's that shot where like the staircase is the width of the thing and it's an overhead. And it was just like, that was inspired. Yeah. And in The Departed, he did cool stuff or unusual stuff, but it was just like, yeah, sure, we'll start out with an iris and then we'll back up.
Sure.
Like
a couple tricks of the trade here. Yeah. No,
classic,
but you know,
Marty.
Maybe we should use our Departed episode as, because I think both of us actually really liked Silence. Yeah. And it was a really underseen movie.
Oh yeah. It was
like hardly anybody saw
one
that
of his
movie.
lowest grossing.
So maybe we
movie.
could just use this as sort of like a plug for
You should see Silence. Yeah. And Anne, you should just watch more Scorsese.
Oh yeah, I got that.
So we're all best buds here, right?
I think
we're
so.
Good.
I think so.
Anne?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Best buds. I'm going to call it. We're best buds on this one.
All right. Judge and jury, Ryan, best buds.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Anne, thank you so much for being on the podcast and offering your insights as a first-time Departed watcher.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to discuss in our next episode.
All right. So, wow, my voice has gotten even worse. Sorry. We probably should have called it.
You mean sexy?
Sexier, yeah. Did I say worse?
Yeah, you said that, but I knew what you meant.
Yes. Thank you. Next time, we're going to go with a movie anniversary. It's been 20 years since the release of The Big Lebowski.
That's right.
And so we're going to watch it. And this is partly, we like this movie and we want to watch it again.
Pretty much, yeah. When pressed, people ask me,
I know.
What's your all-time favorite movie?
You say The Big Lebowski.
I've said it for years.
Yeah.
We've done Barton Fink.
So
we've done a Coen Brothers movie.
Right.
But, you know, we haven't done one of our favorite movies. When you're pressed, what do you say?
I say Magnolia.
Yeah, which we haven't done that movie either. So,
but we did a Paul Thomas Anderson. We did Punch Drunk Love.
Someday we'll have to do your favorite.
Okay.
But, you know,
we don't have to,
you know, with that said, I think we're going to be coming at this a little differently, because I'm not really going to be, I mean, I've seen this movie so many times.
Yeah.
I'm not really going to have a lot of critical things to say about it, if any. But I think it could be kind of a good recap of just what this movie at least means to me.
Yeah.
And I know you love it too, even though
I do. Yeah. But I you know, I don't want to tip my hand too much. I didn't love it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also kind of, I'm going to blame Ajit Pai for this from the FCC. It's kind of become one of those that's like the bro movie to like.
Yeah.
And I'm not comfortable with that. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Like, why
it's
is
cultural?
This? Yeah.
Well, and recently the Washington Post, I think, revisited critics who hated it and said, "Hey, why did you hate this? Or what do you think of it now?" So it's not just us who are thinking about re-examining our love for it, but it's a bona fide phenomenon. And when is the backlash going to start? Maybe now that Ajit Pai is broing it up with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a certain type that, like, you hear, like, favorite movies, Big Lebowski. And you're like, of course it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I could be that person. I don't know.
You might be.
I might be that person.
Maybe you've been a bro this whole time. I know what you're talking about. That it used to mean something for somebody to say The Big Lebowski was their favorite movie, and now it's just like, oh, okay.
To the point where I've kind of had to, and I know this seems kind of ridiculous that I'm so concerned with my own identity and self-image, but like I've been thinking, like, you know, maybe there's another movie that can take that throne.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. I mean, if I were in your position, I would definitely have I would probably preface my answer with many caveats. Is there another movie that if somebody said, or a band that if somebody said it was their favorite band, like there was a time where that would have meant something, but now it's...
I mean, band, and this would be my favorite band, but Radiohead, it means something different now if you say that.
Yeah.
Then
yes, of course, everybody's a fan of Radiohead. Move on. What do you
real
really
original
like?
answer, yeah. But they have to kind of be a movie or a band that became a phenomenon, you know?
I think Christopher Nolan movies are getting to that point.
But then you look like that guy, if you try to explain yourself, you're that guy that's like, well, I was a fan of them before everyone else was.
No, I know. I don't try to explain myself. I just know that when you tell me that, you've told me nothing about yourself.
Maybe that's the best way to put it. I could pick probably any other Coen Brothers movie, and you would learn exponentially more about me by that choice than saying The Big Lebowski.
It's like the Target gift card of movie taste. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine going to Target. And this is useful, thank you. But you haven't shown me that you know me.
Right.
You haven't shown me anything about yourself. I'll go to Target. I'll watch The Big Lebowski. I'll listen to Radiohead.
Target, Radiohead, Big Lebowski, safe bets.
Yeah.
Safe bets, especially for white dudes.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll revisit all that.
Yeah.
In our Big Lebowski.
We'll just say all that again.
Now that we've kind of painted this picture of The Big Lebowski being a movie that everyone loves, but should they? Now you can watch it along with us.
Yeah, answer that question.
Answer that question. Anyways, we do hope that you watch The Big Lebowski with us, and we also just really want to hear from you about our episode today, talking about The Departed, any of our past episodes. Go through those archives and hit us up. Let us know what you think.
Tell us how your speakers made it through. Your subwoofers made it through this episode.
Yeah, we are not liable.
We're not
liable for any speaker damage caused by this episode.
We had a lawyer check out my voice, not a doctor. I don't see the point.
Well, what was more important?
The lawyer.
The lawyer.
Are we? Yeah, and we're clear. We are legally in the clear. Come at us. You will get laughed out of court. We've been assured.
Laughed very deeply, like a bassy laugh. There it is. Careful. People's speakers are probably right on the edge of breaking.
That's not on me.
Well, I know.
Right, Jerry?
Yeah, but we don't have to be jerks.
Jerry says it's not on me.
We don't have to be jerks about it.
Jerry, can we be jerks about it?
We can. Our lawyers are saying...
That's what he's saying. We can, but we don't have to.
We shouldn't give up the name of our lawyer.
I didn't give up his last name.
Jerry, is it okay if we give up your first name?
He's not too pleased.
All right. Anyways, we got Facebook. We got Twitter. So if you do the social media thing, we're there. Twitter, @CWSBF. If you want to talk to us on Facebook, it's just Can We Still Be Friends podcast. And you can also email us anytime, feedback@canwestillbefriends.net, or comment on our website, canwestillbefriends.net. You can reach us by phone if you'd like. We do have a phone number where you can call us anytime. That number is 847-306-9532. So leave us a message. Oh, and also, if you're curious to hear a little bit more of the sort of behind-the-scenes story of Can We Still Be Friends, and a little bit about our recording process, we were actually interviewed this week for a website, Listen Notes. Is a pretty cool podcast directory search engine place, but they also do interviews with podcasters, and we were happy to be a part of that this week. And you can we shared it on our Twitter and Facebook, so you can check there and you can get the link to read up a little bit about how we got to do this whole shebang.
Yeah.
We didn't call it a shebang in the interview.
No, we chose our words a lot more carefully.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to let Ryan talk anymore because his voice is really it's on its last legs. You got legs on your voice, and they're not doing well.
Yeah, and it's gross.
We do just want to thank you for listening to our podcast, and we hope to catch you next time when we discuss The Big Lebowski. You want to, hey, do one last like really low tone.
Just a tone.
Now, listeners, turn that bass down because this is going to hurt.
Just a tone.
Just a tone, yeah.
Just like the lowest tone I can do.
Lowest tone, yeah.
I don't know.
That's the stuff.